That's always gonna get you in. What? What? I'm a rocket. Who says we ain't in the building? Who says we ain't into building? We the Moorish master masons, architects for your children, repping Friday 13th like Jason, without the killing, but we promote life. Oh, it's all about the feeling, and we invoke life, yo. We them light beings. Though you might see him on the block getting this posture, might be talking to cops, giving them caution, occasionally wearing his vest when he's walking. See the turning heads, whispering, gawking, but he's locked in and he's zoned out while we boxed in our own house.
Study the mystics, the adepts, the magi, wisdom of the ancients can all calcify us. Possible mission, free mental numbness, extract the substance with minds of dumbness. Use the source, don't care what some purport, as we know by being told man knows not. Many before the floor, souls got God, placed in the devil's hands, rule in the seven lands. To dogma rituals, Negro spirituals, brainwash subliminal, keeps thinking to a minimal. They still criminal, in a world digital so pitiful. Mental survival so critical, it's visible. Can you see mass writers blocks? Hashtag zombies with waves of cyber thoughts. No need for cell phone, they speak to soft arms. It's nothing for alarm, chips and forearms.
Wind, brass, and bass, such a beautiful serenade. Women feeding me grapes, I'm feeding the new serenades. Whether this night is clear or gray, rain when you hear it fake, giving life you see. Speaking through what I hear today. Show you the future in a glimpse. Then always look to these holes like hallucinatory kids. Sun walked the desert, been more of a since I found God. Look back, used to see his prince. Forget being a prince, I'm a G. OD grown man, no Jody. Deny you don't know me. Don't make me tap into the old me. That's like a couple hundred years. Walk around town with a couple hundred peers and release the peace of up fears. The sun gon' shine, so what tears? This young brother here just trying to get his third eye clear.
This deep, Moors don't sleep. Invest in your mind and body and unleash. Real life rap, spitting over tracks. Conscious thinking and living and then attack. This deep, Moors don't sleep. Invest in your mind and body and unleash. Real life rap, spitting over tracks. Conscious thinking and living and then attack.
So as the moon sets, the sun takes its place and spoons on blocks, inspired spots, fill spaces, peel back, rats, who got cases, fire stain the corridors of flammable faces, game changers, rule benders and no pretenders, style benders, channel my vibe through the vibrant optic lenses, send a message to our veterans, soldiers up and get it in, we on our verge, we are merged, subliminal beings, third eye seeing, still I participate unwilling.
They wanna break me, shit break me, running with my name G, double O-M-D, S-O-N is crazy, for a minute that you think you can take me for a fool like a native to his land, being schooled by a foreign dude, just mistaking me, spiders on the roof, in the dark tools, I've been saying you mistaking me, to better moves for our market, power thing is my tongue, to resistance to target, revealing all lies and deceit on the market, genocide carried out in pockets, I knock it, down bulldozer, David to Goliath, it's an exposure, now some big heads moving and it's getting closer to your downfall, round up on your soldiers.
Little homie, I was seeking a fortune, tired of misfortune. I just wanted a portion, everything that I never had, though I needed my portion. Blowing like porcelain, haters cracking this porcelain. Getting broke, tired of being broke. How we acquire hope, the beach still is dope, just to keep us afloat. Might as deep as the boat, brain is the lethal weapon we want need to below. When I speak up a boat. Walk in the room with my aura feeling like heavy smoke. Feel like when the levy broke under my Louis 50 to semi-coat. Cause dirty cops and kill it, boy, yeah, the joke. The cost of living, higher profits and private prison. These little girls are sunny body just to pay tuition. These little niggas sunny niggas just to build condition. It's like the state they never end the prison in the mission. I wanna free the world, but I'm one man. A couple ones like me and me one plan. I wanna free the world, but I'm one man. A couple ones like me and one plan.
Treat 'em right. Treat 'em right. Treat 'em right. Treat 'em right. Laws are here to uplift the nation that's falling. Instead of buying strip clubs, continuing or falling. Most sisters I know got baby daddy drama. Beating on the mother and he's the grand master. No patriarch or pimping. He is the God of the earth. He calls it a man bag. I call it what it is, a purse. Making claims of strength but can't give birth. Walk into the room through the doors of the church or temple or tabernacle. They all represent her. The story of the first female popes is a blur, not to mention the women saviors rule from both thrones. His and her throne was her own. As my aunt holds the scales with no Tahuti. Though he was a sage scribe, he was her worker bee. See the big picture. Tahuti is thought, which represents thought. Divine manifest in mind molds the thought. Get the mind out the gutter like you gotta treat the mothers right. Get your mind out the gutter like you gotta treat our brothers right. Get your mind out the gutter like you gotta treat the mothers right. Get your mind out the gutter like you gotta treat our brothers right. Mind is man, but women first, like we were taught in ancient schools, which were the wombs, even to the tomb, the afterlife womb. Born again on another realm or back for more truth about our culture as Moors, more by roof. See how far they spread, how deep the roots truth. Get off the emotions, fire water potions. Get the shea butter, my sister, not Jergens lotion. Stop justifying BS, blaming racism. Biz Kane and G-Rap already erased racism. Go back to Diplo Underground, Tupac, or X-Clan and Fezzes leather that you call in a hat. Go back to medallion strings with beads. Golden era, back to question so-called MCs. Prince and smooth operators, Asiatic kings. On a gold throne, four-finger tormenting rings. Get your mind out the gutter like you gotta treat the mothers right. Get your mind out the gutter like you gotta treat our brothers right. Get your mind out the gutter like you gotta treat the mothers right. Get your mind out the gutter like you gotta treat our brothers right. These and verse curses send out Orishas, return like boomerangs, demons dropping with seizures. Calling for sweet Jesus, here comes Nagas Negas. Black handle hex on those trying to police us. Reverse a spell with white candles, witches clothed as cashiers. Behind bars, sexual energy exchange for beers. And she's getting tips with help from whispering spirits. 285 hertz beats, hypnotized sound spell with lyrics. So freaked out their mind, can't hear but fear it. When the truth appears, they won't go near it. Songs are like Reiki, blockages they clear it. So focus on point and diligent, freedom above everything, mind's militant. Like wow, moment eureka when I speak to a sleeper. Make a master fruition and stop being believers. Get the mind out the gutter like you gotta treat the mothers right. Get your mind out the gutter like you gotta treat our brothers right. Get your mind out the gutter like you gotta treat the mothers right. Get your mind out the gutter like you gotta treat our brothers right.
Circle 7, y'all.
Treat 'em right. Treat 'em right. Salam, Morris. What's good? Saturday. The hell's going on? I don't know what's going on, but it's about to get Hulk smash around here. Islam, boy.
Hulk smash around here.
Hulk smash around here.
Boy.
Hulk smash around here. I don't know what anybody's talking about that we're not more. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about. There's some kind of tribe or something. I don't know what people are talking about. No idea. But I do know that we, descendants of Moroccans, born in America, had a prophet that was sent to us to tell us that we're not Negro, black, colored, or any of the fictions, that we are Moors. We are Moors.
Mm-hmm.
We are all Moors. Nur Majid. Christian Spain's long history of clashes with the Moors was encoded in the names and designs of new towns and expressed in a variety of cultural practices. America's indigenous people, makers of some of the greatest civilizations in history, were treated like Moors and subjected to a relentless war of extermination. Quote unquote, the conquest of the Indians, wrote Francisco Lopez de Gamarra in his Historia General de las Indias, began after that of the Moors was completed, so the Spaniards would ever fight the infidels. How come one of the things that people don't recognize is that when the Christians were fighting the Moors in Europe, Spain, Asia, wherever on that side, the Moors were known as infidels to the Christians. Now, when the Spaniards came over here and they met the quote unquote indigenous native whatever is here, they called them infidels too. How come both of them call these people infidels? Oh, because they're L's. Infidel. 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 The Moors. The Moors who the Christians thought were the Los Indios. We were Los Indios. We were God. Now you're telling God, God's not with you. What are you talking about? Indians were seen as less human, unworthy of much except total submission to European rule. Quote, God has never created a race more full of vice and composed without the least mixture of kindness or culture, the Dominican Tomas Ortiz told the Council of the Indies, the king-appointed body that had ultimate authority over Spain's extensive dominions. The crusade against Indians was devastating, but the persecuted natives resisted as best they could, thereby extending the Christian-Muslim war at a symbolic level to our times. Now, if they're talking about the conquest of the Indians, and God never created a race that was so full of vice and composed without the least mixture of kindness or culture than these Indians, why is it that they keep talking about Christian-Muslim wars when they're talking about the Indians? I thought the Indians weren't Muslim. It had nothing to do with Islam and all that. I thought the Indians were Islam exempt because they're not Moors. So Islam has nothing to do with the indigenous people of Turtle Island and all the BS. Islam has everything to do with you because I, self-law, and master is universal. It's not just the Moors only. What do you think the dream catcher is? Circle 7. The dream catcher is a circle 7. If you think dream catcher is to catch your dreams, you're a dumbass. If you think the dream catcher in the window is to catch your dreams when they go into the ethers or whatever BS they told you that the dream catcher is for, you don't realize that these people are telling you that they're Moors. Go look up the First Nations flag, and they have a circle split in 4
with white and black and red and whatever in there, and they're talking about they're not practicing Moors culture. The Moors also arrived in America as black slaves who set out to fight for their rights from the moment they landed. The Moors arrived in America as black slaves. So that means they were Moors, and when they got over here is when they started being black. If you're going to go with some slave ship story and all that stuff, if you're going to go with it, you came over here on a slave ship, then that means you were Moors. But then by the time you got over here, you were black slaves.
Mm-hmm.
Which means in order for you to get back to your ancestors, you just have to say that you're Moors. Okay. But no, they won't do it. They love the BS. It's not more. You have anything to throw in there?
No, you was just killing them, but you just added in, and you were just going over the book We Are All Moors. I got a book here. It's called Mapping the World Differently. African American Travel Writing About Spain. On page 47, it says, if the precise definition and the significance of race differ over time and across cultures, it is important, nonetheless, to recognize the image of the Moor has constantly been associated with these sets of shifting and overlapping categories of identity through which Europeans have identified themselves from the medieval period onwards. This suggests a common use of representations of the Moor. As Emily Bartell notes, despite its ambiguous and shifting identity, the Moor is first and foremost a figure of uncodified and uncodifiable diversity. In the European imaginative geography, the Moor thus becomes a figure that can be constructed in relation to a number of identity categories depending on the time and place from which it is viewed. Now let me read that beginning part again. It said, in the European imaginative geography, in the European imaginative geography, the Moor thus becomes a figure that can be constructed in relation to a number of identity categories depending on the time and place from which it is viewed. Given the instability of this identity, it is not surprising that the purpose-driving traditions of representation exhibiting Moorphobia are varied.
Moorphobia, you said?
Moorphobia.
Moorphobia. Oh, that's a good one. Rakalel, there's one. Moorphobia. Oh.
Given the instability of this identity, it is, I've never even seen anybody use that. I never knew that could be that. That's it. We call them Moor haters. It's Moorphobia. It is not surprising that the purpose-deriving traditions of representation exhibiting Moorphobia are varied and depend on any of number of factors. When employed by the mobilizing and developing the Catholic Spanish national identity, the foreign awesomeness of the Moor's identity is emphasized. When employed by competitors of the Spanish Empire, the Moor's African identity is emphasized as part of the attempt to figure the Spanish as morally or later racially blackened. Look at that. When employed in liberal critiques of blood purity statutes, in the liberal embrace of multiculturalism, or in modernist critiques of modern industrial culture, Moors became exotic or noble figures to be provocatively or not strictly remembered. Now, and the thing is, when I read it, I was like, wait a minute. Right in the beginning, they're telling you this is from a Eurocentric.
Euro.
This is all stemming from how Europeans viewed the Moors from the medieval times and on. So when they be like, oh, Moor means black, that's Eurocentric. It's like, when we be saying that, like, it's not like we just making it up, oh, because that's how we feel. No, it's documented. In the book, Mapping the World Differently, by Maria Cristina Ramos, she puts it. All of that, the way they make it seem like, oh, Moor means black, and we tell them, like, Moor doesn't mean black, and we break it down and all of that. She's telling you, oh, that's Eurocentric thinking. So anytime one of your own come up to you and be like, oh, Moor just means black. No, that's Eurocentric thinking. According to Christina Ramos in Mapping the World Differently. It's not what we say. Scholars written it.
Yeah,
that's Eurocentric thinking.
Yeah, that's not the standard. Scholars are saying this. Scholars are saying this.
Because I know, people, we can say, you got to clarify that before we go in. Because they still, Moor means black. Moor don't mean black. Moor does not mean black at all. That's Eurocentric thinking. Documented. These people got moral phobia.
Moor phobia. That's a real one, though. That one there is crazy. That one there is crazy.
Well, here you go right here, same book. The Moors' difference was so marked, yet the term so in detriment that it was variously applied, most notably to the newly conquered indigenous people of the Americas, who were at times pictured and referred to by the Spanish as the American Moors.
I know, check this one. So Moore got a response from Karen Whitsett, Whittsett, State Representative, District 9. Karen Whitsett. I want to take a moment and thank you for writing into our office about the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. I have reviewed the declaration and have come to the conclusion that I am not the right advocate to bring this issue forward. I am not a member of the indigenous population of North America. Just look up Karen Whitsett. See who she is. State Representative, District 9. And I don't believe that I am the best spokesperson for them. I also believe that the declaration covers and highlights many of the rights and protections under the law that the Constitution, federal law, and state law already cover. Although we may disagree on this topic, I do sincerely appreciate you writing into our office about this topic. Respectfully, Karen Whitsett.
Oh, you got to look at that totally different. I don't know. I agree with her totally because they don't have the jurisdiction to see over our stuff. We just basically putting them on notice of whatever we're about to be doing.
Yeah.
Whatever your situation is, you're just putting her on notice. She don't have jurisdiction to have anything over H. Like she said, I can't be the spokesperson. I know that already. I already know that. You can't speak for me. I'm just putting you on notice because I know the criminals that work for you go around hindering us. I know you're responsible for them. So if anything happens to me, I'm coming after you. Because they work for you. Those highwaymen work for those corporate entities. They got contracts with the so-called city, state, whatever. So she does have
and again,
ownership over those highwaymen.
Right, and then again to confirm that's why I told you go check Karen Whitsett, because it's a sister. So we're not talking about some European perspective, some European mindset of the black versus the white, and then we don't have rights because the white lady's holding us back. No, we're talking, they're corporate.
Yeah.
It's diversity. So they don't have jurisdiction to talk on indigenous matters, which is exactly what it is from the position of she works for them. She's not her own entity. Now, if you pull her off the record or whatever, guarantee she'll be like, oh yeah, my mom's Cherokee and all that stuff. My grandma's Blackfoot and all that, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
They'll run it down. Just go look at her. You know that she's indigenous, aboriginal to over here. If you go look at her. So she's talking BS. But it's not, it's like Ivan Van Sertima. You know what I mean? Like they made him talk BS in They Came Before Columbus.
Yep,
because there's
like that.
Too much places that more could have been in there, that more wasn't in there. And no way he wrote that big book and never found the word more or whatever. If we're just doing this little piece of studying right here and we're putting, we are all Moors, got Moors written on every page in that book pretty much. Every page. And he's not even a Moor like that. He's a pale Arab talking about that we're all Moors. But always interesting.
Tour saying it too.
Say again?
I say he's going on tour saying it too.
Yeah.
Different colleges and stuff invite him to come and say, we are all Moors.
Right. Crazy.
Just real quick information, just boom, boom, boom. Just, I couldn't believe it. Like, just more.
We'll take a quick interjection for this one. We'll just let some of this play. There was something interesting said here. Again, Islam to the Moors, that study. And they don't play this thing, oh yeah, I'm going to only learn from one website. I'm just going to be on rebate publications only. If you only go to that website, you're not really a Moor. Okay, we don't only go to that website, but our sources are not, everybody's not really up on our stuff. Because we deal with the Moors who are serious about this. We don't deal with the jokers. So we'll let some of this run because Moore was studying and they said that they heard something very interesting, a very interesting perspective brought to us by the good brother, Asir the Duke.
Citizen, which falls into the 14th Amendment. So let's read this one more time. For 150 years following the first settlement of the American colonies, their inhabitants were subjects of a foreign power. What was the foreign power? Foreign power was the Moorish Empire. How can we prove that? Because it says all the way back on January 3rd, 1845, in regards to the annexation of Texas, the stupendous deserts of the Nueces and the Bravo rivers are the natural boundaries between the Anglo-Saxon and the Mauritanian races. When have you ever heard them refer to Mauritanian races, meaning groups of different types of Moors or Mauritanians, which is a Latin term? That's a Latin word.
Now, why? Why would they say Mauritanian races over here? Why? Could it be because Let's just see right here. Again, Islam to the Moors that study. Khan Academy. Dr. Norali Hohensi. Aztec feathered headdress backstory. So let's just look at the headdress. Let's just look at it. Just look at the headdress. If the Moors in the chat, do you see anything in the headdress that you might think Moorish? Like what? Like just look at the headdress. The Negro black colored, they might not see stuff. Black Indian, Chippewa tribe, Cherokee, Lenape, whoever's, they might not see things because, you know, they're blind. They have not been to the door where the marvelous light's behind the door yet. But we're gonna leave that up for a little bit. I just want more, so just put it in the chat so when people are reading the chat, they can see really what's good. Is there anything in here that stands out that might just make you think about Moors?
Just off of the fact, real quick.
Yeah, man.
Just because of the background they use, I already see the flag. They got the green, they got the red in the back. I see the flag. First thing I see, I'm like, okay, that's the flag. Then second thing I see the arcs.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, oh, they got the arcs right in the middle, like boom. I'm like, oh, okay, because I looked at it, but as soon as you said it, I'm like, okay, now I'm looking.
No, I'm looking at it. Now I'm looking at it. Now what I also see.
I'm like, oh wow, look at the arcs and everything.
Right, and then what I also see is the turban with the plume feather, and then the feathers that go to the highest, that's the plume feather. And then the arc would be the opening of the turban.
Yep.
And then the feathers look like it's wrapped like a slinky.
Oh man. Oh wow. Yeah, the whole thing is
like it's a big turban. It's a big turban, right?
It's a big turban.
A big turban, and then there's the plume feather in the front.
Right in the middle. Right in the pineal gland show.
Yeah, the pineal gland open, right? And then the pineal gland is open because then all the all the arches are the different realms or the gates that you go through when you go into the. Oh my goodness.
Oh my goodness.
And then
like
also
said,
too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now I'm looking. Now I'm looking. As soon as you said, yo, it looked like a slinky.
A slinky.
Said, oh, okay. Now I see it. I see the whole thing. I was like, oh, that whole thing is the turban. Okay. The whole thing is the turban. The whole thing. It's a green turban.
It's a green turban. A green turban with the pineal open. That's crazy.
Yeah, I didn't notice all of that. I see it now.
Yeah, it's all about.
These guys just get feathers and just paint.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I got a feather.
I got feathers. I'm a native. I got a feather. It's bigger than that. Way bigger than that.
Walking around with missing turbans. You gotta have the whole shebang. You just got a feather. You need the whole. That's like a hole in your turban. The rest of your turban. That's a turban, man. Look at that. A green turban.
Right, and then at the top of the arch, the little part that's extended on the arch could also be the opening, the top of the head opening, and then the feathers, the plume feather is the The energy shooting out the top of the head.
Yep. Yep. It's activated.
Yeah.
Everything's aligned. All the chakras is aligned. You're activated now.
Boy said Stevie Wonder could see that's a turban.
So after he caught the mic, yeah, you can see that as a turban.
Islam to pardon the interjection.
The microphone's on stage.
Yeah, Islam to pardon the interjection and Moorish American top 10 countdown. Give thanks for all the shout outs.
Oh, Islam. Islam.
Islam to all the Moors. Right, Aztec feather headdress. But hold on a second. We're not done. Right. We're not done. You thought it was done? Like it's not done.
We gotta back our hypothesis.
It's not done, right? Backstory, right? Let's go to the backstory now. Now that we got the front story with this is a turban, really. Now let's get the backstory. This headdress is also called the penacho of Montezuma II. Montezuma II's headdress was first mentioned in European inventory in 1596, when it was acquired by Austrian Archduke Ferdinand II von Tyrol. Write down the Austrian Archduke Ferdinand II von Tyrol. It was listed there. That was European inventory, right? 1596. 1596, remember. It was listed there as a Moorish hat. It was likely an object sent from Mesoamerica to Europe by Cortez.
Yeah, that's crazy. By Cortez.
By Cortez.
It was listed in 1596 in inventory. So in inventory, that means they found it in 1596. We don't know how long it's been in there. But that's when they went to the inventory and it was like, okay, this is the year 1596. And this is, when we opened it, boom, it was called the Moorish hat. That's what it's called.
The Moorish hat, off the top.
But when did they put it in there? How long was it in inventory?
Yep.
Cortez came in like 1502 or something like that. It's been 90 something years. He came in like 1502. And he opened it in 1596. It's been over, it has to been, even more than 50 years it's been in there. So let's say early 1500s, something like that. It was already known. Columbus came here in 1492, so-called. It's only been 10 years and they're still just saying Moorish. That's look at that. A Moorish hat.
Moorish hat.
Montezuma II. I thought that was Indian chief such and such feather stuff. All these Indian chief guys wear these things. That's a Moorish headdress.
Moorish hat. Yeah, but they're not Moors. They're gonna wear feathers, but they're not Moors though. But Montezuma, Moorish hat. 1596.
Which is really a turban. Grand Street, you're the only one that said that.
No, it just hit me looking at it. I was like, damn, it looks like a slinky. He's like, what is it? No, slinky. Crazy.
And you can see like the curve.
Yo, you can see the curve.
You know what I mean?
But then I'm thinking about if he does the profile, the side view, then it would show the feathers going back, which is how all of them look.
All of them. All of them. All of them. Look at that.
And and also too, the freaking archers turned to a band. They closed the gates. Anybody who's wearing some Indian feather, if they don't have the arches and it's a band, you know that they closed the arches. They closed the gates. They shut the gates down. They took away the history of the Moors being tied to this side. By just giving you some Indian thing, a band around the head with some Indian stuff and a belt, and now you're native. But no, you're Moorish. And a Moorish turban, but you know, let's just hear some more what Duke has to say.
It looks like an eye too.
That's old.
Looks like a? That's what
it looks like an eye. Like it could be an eye, like an eyeball. Like it can be the third eye. That picture looks crazy, man. Like I just looked at it. I read a book one time. It says when you look at a picture, look at it at an angle. Like try to look at it from a peripheral, and you get like a better, clear version of it, and you start seeing crazy. As soon as I did it, I was like, yeah, that looks like the third eye.
Yeah.
It looks like the eye, the all-seeing eye. Like that's it. Like I'm like, wait a minute, that looks like it could be the all-seeing eye too at the same time. Like that thing looks crazy, man. Like a portal. It don't just look like, I don't even see feathers.
Yeah, now I don't even see feathers. Now I see the red circle is the light at the end of the tunnel. And then the feathers are now the freaking, you know, when you're going through the wormhole,
right?
And you see the stuff on the side or whatever, and we're just walking toward the red, and all we're seeing is green stuff just on the side.
That could be, you know how in that picture of the chief Moore, you know, underneath his cloak, it shows like a little piece of the fez. That could be like the little piece of the fez showing right underneath it.
Yeah.
Like I'm like, yo, this whole thing got me bugged out. That's definitely our colors of the flag. You can see it in it.
Yeah, definitely.
The green is Venus. You know that already.
Yep, you know Venus has to be in there. And then the red, of course.
That's the low chakra. That's the base chakra. Red is the base chakra. Yeah. That's at the bottom right there. They got the whole thing set up. Perfect. Look like a portal, man. I don't even see feathers.
Don't even see feathers. What feathers? What feathers? What feathers?
I have no idea how they put that together. Moorish hat. Look at that.
Crazy.
That's Conquistador's name. You know it's a headdress.
You know it's a headdress.
Whatever it is, they put more. That's what you say. As long as you put more in front, I don't care what you do.
I don't care what you want to say after that. You just put more in front and you're good. Moorish hat, fine. We'll go with that.
Fine.
We'll go with that. Let's get back to the Duke.
Old Latin. So when we talk about Mauritania over there, Mauritius over there, find out when they were founded. Because they were founded based upon the titles of nobility and stuff that we already had by setting up the colonies we set up over there in ancient times, which allowed us to rule Europe through. The Anglo-Saxon and the Mauritanian races, there ends the Valley of the West, there Mexico begins. Thence the Bravo began. The Moorish people and their Indian associates, ... to whom Mexico properly...
What? Their Indian what? Where's the law dictionary? What the hell's an associate? Since people want to play around. The Moorish people and their Indian associates. The Indian associates? How come they don't have a superior position? Why are they an associate?
Because they have home. If you have home.
If you guys are the ones who are the authority, it's crazy that they said it like that. They didn't call the Moors something
You're an
else.
associate.
Associate signifies confederacy or union for a particular purpose, good or ill. Signifies confederacy or union for a particular purpose. And again, if you take a look at the picture, you see who the authority is. Think about this. You're not looking at ancient Egypt or whatever. You're looking at Mexico. And there's turbans with feathers or portals or whatever
Right.
on the natives, with pyramids here and obelisks.
Some of them structures still up in our backyard right now.
The land,
Still up.
the freehold. Okay, so that means then 150 years before that, all of this land over here was a part of the United States, the Societas Republicae y Moracanos Estados. The Moracanos is where we get the Mauritanian from because it's all Latin. And the only people that were speaking Latin over here was us. And all of the so-called Mauritanian Moorish peoples were already over here looking like this. We were the ones that laid siege to Rome and went in from northern Africa, meaning north of Africa, right? Us over here in North America went over to Africa, shut it down from the beachhead that we set up, and that became the Barbary States. Because the Barbary States were created by the Barbary powers, and the Barbary powers were the ones that gave jurisdiction for the United States to function. We can prove this in the book, Diplomatic Relations Between the United States and the Barbary Powers by Irwin. We can prove it by the books with Chitsey, but don't worry, I'll show you all of the titles.
And we could also prove it by the book. What's your book?
Oh yeah, I was about to say that. Morocco in the United States, 1776 to 1956, from Luella J. Hall.
Luella J. Hall. Don't forget Luella.
Luella. Yeah.
The hell is a Luella?
Yeah.
Luella? And she murdered it in the book too? Come on.
Yeah.
Only ritual humor in space and time. Only the names distinguish Santiago from Cortez and the Moorish king from Montezuma. Why is there a Moorish king in Montezuma? Don't forget, Montezuma is not just a guy. Montezuma is also a place. Why is there a Moorish king there? Why do you think Moor doesn't want to be known as Boriken? Because he's Moorish.
Yeah.
The fiesta of the Holy Cross, celebrated on May 7th, 1651, included impersonators of Indians, Montezuma, Cortez, the Moors, and the Grand Turk. What's the Grand Turk doing over here? In Calhuacan, A buffoon dressed as the devil mocked the Moorish king and the Christians and leered at the bystanders. America in European consciousness. See also Theodor Hamp, Das, whatever, Christoph Weiditz, von Sienen, Risen, whatever, for the use of Moorish instead of Mexican, on a derivative of Christopher Weiditz's drawings of Aztecs. Moors is also apparently used for the indigenous inhabitants of the West Indies.
Look at that.
Hold on, let's just put this in perspective. Moors are used for the indigenous inhabitants of the West Indies. What's the West Indies? Okay,
Inhabitants.
let's put West Indies up and see what shows up. West Indies. Cricket. West Indies. Cricket. Cricket comes up. Now let's see here. West Indies. So here's the West Indies. The quote-unquote Caribbean. This is the West Indies now, right? Just read this again. Moors is also apparently used for the indigenous inhabitants of the West Indies. Let's go back to the map right here. So if all these people are Moors right here, Cuba, Cayman Islands, Jamaica, Haiti, Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, U.S. Virgin Islands, British Virgin Islands, St. Kitts and Nevis, Montserrat, Antigua, Anguilla, Barbuda, Guadeloupe, Dominica, Martinique, Barbados, Grenada, Trinidad and Tobago, St. Lucia, St. Vincent, the Grenadines, Aruba, Curacao, Bonaire is all part of the Moroccan Empire then, if all those are Moors. And if all those are just mere islands in the Caribbean Sea, which is really the Atlantic Ocean, then where else is Morocco? If the inhabitants of the West Indies are known as Moors, and those are just the islands, what are the people on the mainland called? They weren't called Moors though. These little people on the island were called Moors. One of the greatest names of Asiatics in history. But the mainland people were called Indians and Cherokee and all that stuff. Really? That's the logic right now? That's the logic we're on. And don't forget, for the use of Moorish instead of Mexican. Why would you put Moorish instead of Mexican? They're in Mexico, and they're not saying Mexican, they're saying Moorish. How does that even make sense? Unless Mexicans are Moors, and Mexico is part of the Moroccan Empire. So it's very easy to say, call them Moors. And if Mexicans are Moors, then there's no way that any black, Indian, Cherokee, whatever, could tell me they're not Moors. No way Lenni Lenape could tell me they're not Moors if Moorish is used instead of Mexican. And if Moors are the inhabitants, the indigenous inhabitants of the West Indies. No way you're pulling them games on me. Maybe a fool dumb Negro out here who doesn't study and doesn't whatever. But
that's the other crazy thing too, right there. It just said it. Moorish was used before Mexican. They were just Moors. Wasn't no Mexicans. That's why we know that they're Moors. Like we know that they're Moors. They're playing this immigration game. That's a game. We know that that's Spanish Inquisition practices. They still kicking the Moors out of Al-Andalus.
Mm-hmm.
They're still kicking us out of the Moroccan Empire. Trying to kick us out. This is the thing. They kicked part of our ancestors out of Al-Andalus. Then when they came to the empire, now we're in the history of them trying to expel us from the empire. Mm-hmm. We're part of that history now.
Yep.
Because now that's not Al-Andalus, that's Spain. Now this ain't Morocco. They call it America, United States. Right? They're doing the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
They've done it all. They just colonized and changed names all over the Moroccan Empire. That's what they do. All they need some paper bull, some Pope paper bull, and under what is this? Under what is Caesar? Give to Caesar what is Caesar's or whatever. These people don't worship Jesus.
Right.
They worship Caesar.
Amor asks, would more also mean Westerner? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're in the West. We're in the West. The West is over here. Europeans not from over here. So stop calling Europeans the West, because they're not the West. We're the East and we're the West.
Yep. And that goes back again to what Emily Bartel said. The image of the Moor has consequently been associated with these sets of shifting and overlapping categories of identity through which Europeans have identified. The Europeans have identified all of this. This is not Morocco stuff. That's Eurocentric thinking. Emily Bartel. Telling you, anything that is pointed to this not being the correct, that's Eurocentric thinking. Because she knows that this is Moroccan.
Mm-hmm.
Any other version of it not being that way, she breaks it down in categories. Then that's called Eurocentric, the Eurocentric Spanish Catholic version. That's what you're going with.
Right. Want the dummy version. Now this one as well.
Look at that.
Put this one out there as well. More sent this one. Coat of arms for the Kingdom of Aragon, made between 1370 to 1440 AD. It commemorates the 4 Moorish kings killed in battle by Pedro VIII in 1096. Readers should note that the word Moor or Moorish, blackamoor, does not mean an African Muslim, because in early European history, all Africans were referred to as Moors. All Africans were referred to as Moors. And if they're going to say that the Olmecs are Africans that came over there and set up shop and all that stuff, then the Olmecs are Moors. If Mansa Musa is African because he's from Mali, then Mansa Musa is a Moor, because all Africans were referred to as Moor. Or you're talking about some Senegambia, you're talking about wherever you want to talk about, Congo, Moors. Because just like when they came over here, when they came into the motherland, they saw people who looked like the people who saved them in Europe out of the Dark Ages. Of course, they know who the Moors are. Do you? Like we said, the problem isn't this European. Europeans not the problem. The problem is these sellouts who are trying to keep us everything but Moors, doing their best. Now I'll put this one out to you, Brother Yusuf. Greetings, Grand Sheikh. This was a email sent. Greetings, Grand Sheikh. I'm a new Moor who recently joined a temple in Texas. I'm a little confused. The Grand Sheikh, along with members, told me that the ID card from RV Bay Publications doesn't allow you to enter federal buildings, and or name correction proclamations only come from the temple. So much information seems to be conflicting with my studies. Please help.
Okay, Islam.
Islam.
Now, it's a good question. Now, I remember on Blog Talk Radio, Mother Roz Mariah said she used her ID and got into a federal building. Now, this the mother who was part of RV Bay Publications herself. She said she did it. And there's other Moors who have done it too. It's not like it hasn't been done. It's been done. You know, really, I don't really have to give no laws or anything why you should be or anything. It's already been done. It's being done. And the thing about, you have to get your proclamation papers from the temple. See, that's it. We were just going over that the other day.
Yep.
When I had found the freedom papers from the 1850s.
Mm-hmm.
The prophet came in 1913 instead of the old Canaanite temple. People had freedom papers. Frederick Douglass, whose real name is Frederick Bailey, he had freedom papers in the 18th century. This is all before the Moor Science Temple. People then had papers to correct their status.
Exactly.
Even, for example, when they said that the lady was kidnapped and held for extortion, like, only way you can do that is because of her status and her paperwork. Other than that, she would have been back into slavery.
Yeah, right back into
Because
slavery.
she corrected her status, and that's before the Moor Science Temple of America. Like, you don't need you. That's why the prophet said, if you don't do anything else, declare your nationality, declare who you are. You better know that you were Moor. Like, that's the first thing, and then you can present that on paperwork. You know what I mean? Knowing what you have in your mind, putting that on paper, and making sure that like, okay, I know that I'm not going to be enslaved by no contract, no anything, by these de facto colonist corporations, entities, none of that. Like, but for them to present, it seems as if you have to go to the temple and get your paperwork. And that's the other thing. Where were they pre?
Where were they?
Pre-RV Bay publication, pre-Great Seal. I never heard of none of these temples saying, come here and get your paperwork.
Yeah.
That itself is new. I didn't even know they started doing paperwork.
Yep.
That's new to me. That's kind of new. Like, that's I didn't know they were coming to the temple. I'm like, when they start doing that, if they do that, you better get that contract and look at that, because I'm pretty sure they're producing membership in 14th and 15th Amendment. They're not doing national. They're not presenting it as a national side, as this being the land of Morocco. They're not pushing with that. They're not even. They better look at that, because it's either going to be corporate or putting you back into slavery somehow. You better read that. You better read it. Read anything. I don't care what it is. Read every. That's why. Okay. Yeah, I'll say it. If you when the Grand Sheikh said, read the paper, I already went over this. Read it, write it, read it, write it. When you've done that enough, like, I'm the perfect example. You'll see it, and you know, you be like, I don't have to send this back to them. I can do this myself. Because it clicked. Like, I studied that much. Like, I can do this with my own people in my household, my domicile. I can just do this with my Moabite, the people, her mother. I don't really, you know, once I got law dictionaries, I saw what a seal was. Like, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm good. I can do this. But knowing at the same time, it's nation building, that you might as well just go back to the foundation where you got it. That's what I did. So, but what you're studying completely, you already know, like, oh, it's me. Prophet said, you said it yesterday. Prophet said, if you're the only one, be the only one. If you're the only one, who's going to sign your paperwork?
Mm-hmm.
If it's just you, who's going to do your paperwork? Who's going to be your witness for your freedom paper? If it's just you. You're the one. You don't need somebody to clear it. Like, once you're studied, you know all of that.
Mm-hmm.
You know all of that. You know that. That's why he said, he's new. You can, once you study, just keep studying. I know people be like, that word sounds, maybe you need another word, but that's the best word in the world. I love to study. I love it. A lot of this information that we're going over tonight. I mean, right now, I got 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm up, studying, still going in. After we got done doing class, I'm studying. Doing 3 o'clock in the morning. Like, it's more. It's more. It's more to this. It's still more to this. I'm still studying. I find stuff, me and the Grand Sheik, shocked. Like, how could this be? You know what I mean? Shocked. But to say you can't get into a federal building, which I don't even have, and that's me. Again, that's me. If you don't know what you're doing, don't do it. But I don't have that ID. I don't even have one of those, what they call a state ID. I don't have that. I don't even have it. I don't even have one. Only IDs I have is from the online RVJ publications, the online university. That's the only ones I got. And I do plenty of things I do everything with that. Everything. Everything's coming from that. I have issues, but once you know who you are, can't nobody tell you nothing. Nothing. They feel that in the beginning, you're going to get challenged just because it's like an animal. It's like an animal. Like, they smell it. You know what I mean? They smell you, know what you're doing. But once your energy is right, because you kept studying gets rid of fear. So that energy goes away when you go present any information anytime. So once you go in there, well studied, they feel that energy. They're gonna hurry up and help you. That's what they're gonna do. It's not gonna be any issue because they already know. You know what he's talking about. I can see in people's face. My ID is old, wear and tear. I love it like that. Yeah. That's the first thing I noticed too. That when they get it, they're like, it's not new. It's old. That's the.
Been using this.
Messes with the mind. People's mind is, crazy how it works. You're looking at it like, oh, he's been had this thing. Like, okay, I can't tell you. What am I tell you? You always use this. It looks like, it's old. They wear and tear. I love it looking like that. Can't see the numbers on it. I know the numbers. It's right here, but you can't see. I know it. I know it. Once you get to that, you don't. And then that's again. The prophet said, "Man is not known, man is told." So if somebody told you that, you're supposed to go study. Don't just listen to what he said. You're going on the right direction too by getting by asking the question to Canaanland Moors. to get some clarification. That's the right direction. But start studying. You already know that doesn't seem clear right there. That's why you smell smoke. That's why you ask the question. A lot of the times we just ask questions we already know the answer to.
Yeah, and trust me, when they start blocking you from the federal building because of your ID, that's supposed to let you know that's not a federal building. When you go to the federal building and say, I have a Moorish ID, and you put your ID down and say, oh, sorry, we can't accept this, they're letting you know we're not a federal building.
Yeah, that's it too.
Don't get mad. They're telling on themselves. I want to go into the garbage chute because no, but you're not garbage. No, but I got a nationality card. I should be able to go down the garbage chute. It's the fastest way down. Why take the stairs, the elevator? I can just go down the garbage chute.
Yeah.
The other one was another one in here. I think that was it. So that's.
Don't forget to read that other one neither, too.
Oh, don't worry, I got it.
Yeah.
That last one, gotta get it. That last one's gotta get it.
Yeah.
Yep. Standard or headdress. In 1878, his attention was directed to its former presence at the Belvedere Museum by a notice in Baron von Sacken's descriptive catalogue of the Imperial Ambrose collection printed in Vienna in 1855, wherein among rare objects from various parts of the world it is mentioned as follows. Number 3, a Mexican headdress about 3 feet in height composed of a magnificent green feathers with golden luster and of a colored bands of featherwork studded with small plates of gold. This specimen was termed in the inventory of 1596 a Moorish hat. Guided by his note, Herr von Hochstetter, with the assistance of Dr. Ilg, the custodian of the Ambrose collection, found the precious relic and restored it from an obscure corner of a showcase where it hung, folded together next to a medieval bishop's mitre and surrounded by sundry curiosities from North America, China, and Sunda Islands. It was unfortunately in so impaired the moth-eaten a condition that, to use Herr Hostetler's words, he feared it would fall to pieces on taking it from the case. Permission was obtained for its immediate transfer to the ethnographical collection, then in process of formation, and the valuable object was placed under the care of Herr von Hochstetter, who proceeded to provide for its future preservation and to investigate its past history with the following interesting results. Its earliest recorded date is as far back as 1596, was found in the first inventory of the Ambrose collection, written 1 year after the demise of the Archduke of Ferdinand of Tyrol. The founder of the collection by the imperial commissioners appointed to revise his will. On folio 472 of this ancient document, it is catalogued with other objects of featherwork contained in a chest number 9 and is described as a Moorish hat. of a beautiful, long, lustrous green and gold-hued feathers, bedecked above with white, red, and blue feathers, and gold rosettes and ornaments. In front of the forehead, it has a beak of pure gold. The term Moorish here applied can scarcely be regarded as a deceptive one inasmuch as Montezuma, the king of Temistitan and Mexico, is subsequently designated as a Moorish king in this same inventory of 1596.
Read that line again.
The term Moorish, as here applied, can scarcely be regarded as a deceptive one inasmuch as Montezuma, the king of Temistitan and Mexico. So they went somewhere else now. They said, oh, yeah, you think this is just some deceptive whatever? Well, the king of this other place in Mexico is designated as a Moorish king. Not just Montezuma.
Right. Somebody else was called a Moorish king.
It is interesting to note the gradual changes that occur in the wording of the subsequent periodical official registrations of this Moorish hat. In 1613, its description was faithfully reproduced. In 1621, the word Indian was substituted for Moorish. With the single alteration, the original text was again transcribed. We'll just say that part again. It is in 1613, its description was faithfully reproduced. In 1621, the word Indian was substituted for Moorish.
Look at that. That's groundbreaking. So there's no Indian Autochthonness, Aboriginal, none of that.
All those are substitutes.
Substitutes.
All those are substitutes. Sound like Abdullah. Substitute bays.
Yep.
All of them. Some substitute bay-ass niggas. They don't want to be Moors, but they want to be Indians. And they want to be tribes.
Yeah.
Yeah, those draw these Cherokee, but you're telling me that Lenny Lenape, you sat down with them and they said they never called themselves Moors? Stop the BS.
Yep.
Stop the BS.
1621.
1621. Do your math, slavery guys.
That's when slavery, ain't that when slavery started in Jamestown, Virginia?
Oh, interesting. Interesting. Shit, these niggas. Islam.
Yeah, that's the killer. 1621. I don't even want to. They should just take all their videos down.
Mm-hmm.
We're not Moors. That's a lie.
We're Moors. You mean we're not indigenous? We're not Aboriginal, even though we are that. But our free national is tied to that empire.
Right. People in
Not
the
some
West
tribe.
Indies, Jamaicans.
Yeah, not
all
some
of that.
tribe within the empire. So keep in mind the high points. Mind the high points. The good brother Asir letting you know that the Indians were our associates. Our associates. No superior, inferior, anything. because Indian was replaced Moors. So it's really Moorish associates, which makes way more sense if you're talking about Mauritanian people and their Indian associates. Moorish people and their Moorish associates makes a lot more sense to me. Since we know from historical essay on a relic of ancient culture, we know that Indians replaced Moor.
Yeah, I get goosebumps hearing that. Like, for real, man. I can't stop smiling hearing that. 1621. They got the date. They got the year for you.
Yep.
They got the year for you. They got the year for you. I'm like, yo, this is incredible. And I'm like, yo, they just selling out. All of them. What do you mean? I read it. You're going to tell me I didn't see that when I saw it? 1596 in the bolt that they found. This guy discovered, and he opened it, it said Moorish hat. 1596.
Honest to him for putting it out how he found it.
Moorish hat. Because, at this time, it's not a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's known.
Yeah.
It's just known. These people just selling out now. Getting benefits. Kickbacks. People are, what did he say? Slavery is a lucrative business. Slavery is a lucrative business. That's a big. But he said that's one thing this guy said in this ADOS thing that I have to agree with. He said you could have became a millionaire off of slavery. I said that's right. That's right. And it's the same thing you can do today. Today, slavery is big business. Big business. All the way down to the core. The slums. Everything is selling out. Slavery. Keep everything where it's at. Slavery. Black, 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 black. Everything is slavery. Slavery is big business. Big business. Slavery, human trafficking, all of that. Prophet said it the best. The worst is yet to come. We're in it.
We're in the worst that was about to come. It's messed up.
I told the grand chief, my mobile and my son, they went on quote unquote vacation, because I looked that word up. I don't like what it means. But they went on so-called vacation, and 4 days I just stayed in the house. Like, what do you want me to go out there and do? What do you want me to go out there and do?
Everything there that you need. Yeah, everything there that you need.
It's crazy out there. These people it's crazy. Walking around. I read this thing on the Aztecs, which we know are the Moors we just read about. Moorish kings and all of that. So the Moors. About drinking back in the how we looked at it. And that's another thing. I'm like, dang, man, everything to how we think is Eurocentric. Because how our ancestors looked at being drunk meant when you got drunk, you were letting in, that's why they call it spirits, because you were letting in spirits. Literally, I didn't know. I thought it was just a nickname, and they were playing around with it. Nah, your ancestor called it spirits, because they knew that's exactly what it would do. Like, we would take on these these gods that would enter our bodies because we were drunk. So when we got aggressive and angry and stuff like that, those were the different gods. And playful, and happy and sad, and those were different guys coming in to us playing these acts, because it's not you. Anybody knows that. You're not you when you're drunk. And I'm like, oh, this is crazy, man. Like, this whole, they was just breaking it down. And the punishment was crazy, man. People, kings was killing their children because you was drinking. You couldn't drink. Drinking was a big penalty. Like, you would die for drinking Polic. Yeah, Polic. They kept drinking Polic. You could do it. They said you could use it. Our ancestors would use it for spiritual practices. But if you would overdo it, you would get fined. But a lot of these things were going on in the markets. And that's what reminded me too, because every time we watch like ancient movies, everything is going on in the markets. Everything is going on during markets. And I'm like, oh wow, this even like in Kung Fu movies and stuff, this is going on in markets. And I'm like, oh, this is all morgues. Yeah. You know what I mean? So people would get to make example of the people getting drunk, intoxicated in public. They said that the Moors, so-called Aztecs, after the judges found the people guilty of being intoxicated, they would smash their heads in with boulders right at the markets. Let everybody see it. They smashed their head in. Wham! I was like, yo, they did not play. But they said everybody was drinking, though. I said, oh, that's crazy. Yeah, I said, that's the craziest thing in the world. Like, everybody was drinking privately in their house, but it was illegal. Like, you couldn't drink, but everybody was drinking. And if you got caught, you would die. I was like, yo, that's crazy, man. That's crazy.
That's nuts. But you have to be caught actually doing it.
Yeah, you got to get caught actually doing it. You got to get caught actually doing it.
Only alcoholics
all of that. And it continued on, too, because we were, man, a lot of the stuff we got to know that we started, you know, because that buying, I'm sitting there reading it, and it's saying how you can buy your freedom. Like, law wasn't, like, you can, I'm like, dad, you can even buy it off back then. Like, people would give up grain or whatever, and get themselves off of it. You know what I mean? Like, whatever. And then it reminded me of, as soon as I read it, I said, oh, yeah, in the Circle 7, when they was about to put Yahshua up, all three of them, this dude paid his way off the cross. He was about to get the justice, and he was like, nah, I got some bread. I'm getting off of this. And then he tried to, and I was like, yo, this reminds me of that. It's the same thing with in law and justice. Like, the way it is now, you can pay your way off. In this book, it talks about lawyers, so the lawyers, and how lawyers, that's going to be another lucrative thing too. Everybody's going to start becoming a lawyer. It's bad now. When the book came out, I think it was like in the 90s or something like that. There was already 196,000 lawyers in the so-called United States. But by the next year's graduation class, it would be 497,000. That's it. But that was in the 90s. It's 2019. He wrote the book. He also said in so-called San Francisco, out of every 100 men, one person's a lawyer. But all of these lawyers, they were just dissing. Like, the book is called How to Avoid Probate. It's How to Avoid Probate by Norman F. Danson. Right? And he just starts going in about how different people were just dissing lawyers. Because, all right, I'm gonna start. All right. It says, in the decline of Roman jurisprudence, the ordinary promotion of lawyers was pregnant with mischief and disgrace. The noble art, which had once been preserved as the sacred inheritance of patricians, was fallen into the hands of freedmen and plebeians, who with cunning with cunning rather than with skill, exercise a sordid and pernicious trade. Some of them procured admittance into families for the purpose of formatting differences, of encouraging suits, and of preparing a harvest of gain for themselves or their brethren. Others, recluse in their chambers, maintain the gravity of legal professors by furnishing a rich client with subtleties to confound the plainest truth and with arguments to color the most unjustifiable pretensions. The splendid and popular class was composed of advocates who filled the forum with sound of their turgid and rhetoric. Careless of fame and justice, they are described for the most part as ignorant and rapacious guides who conduct their clients through a maze of expense, of delay, and disappointment. Hold on, this is they talk about the lawyers. Most part, he says that they're described for the most part as ignorant and rapacious guides who conducted their clients through a maze of expense, of delay, and of disappointment, for which after a tedious series of years, they were at length dismissed when their patience and fortune were almost exhausted. This is what going on with their lawyer. He said, in our own time, President Jimmy Carter, in a 1978 speech to the American Bar Association, accused its members of devoting their time to protecting, quote, the comfortable insulations of the privilege. The bar, he says, is a hierarchy of privilege, with 90% of our lawyers serving 10% of our people. We are over-lawyered and underrepresented during most of the struggles for equal justice in our time. Much of the bar sat in sidelines or opposed those efforts. And that's what I was saying with these lawyers. Like, people better start studying, because you don't want no lawyer to be representing you or presenting you. You know what I mean? Sitting in your place. And in Grand Sheet, that's how I mentioned the other day. You see how we start studying and it leads to something else? I don't even know where I got to the lawyer book.
For real. So one of those pop-up joints pop up on you?
Oh, this one. Oh, yeah. This the one like that book we were just going over?
Yeah.
Remember I told you I went to finally found a thrift store that was open and snuck out 5 books real quick. As soon as I get home, I open up the so-called Aztec book. It goes straight to the Moorish hat page. So then I go online and I start sending it up. And I'm like, but the thing, I'm like, yo, I just got this. Just got this. Just got this. And all of it. Moorish hat. Which the Grand Sheik discovered it's a turban. It is a turban, man. That's a turban.
It's gotta be.
It said it had a full gold beak. When you was reading the description about it.
Yeah, the gold beak was crazy. The Moorish hat.
Montezuma II, the Moorish king. Mexican, 1621. Okay? Let's not forget that. Can't let that slide. 1621. Indian was substituted for the word Moorish. 1621.
Indian substituted for the word Moorish. So if Indian was substituted for the word Moorish, then every Aboriginal, Indigenous, whatever, was substituted to the word Moorish, because Moorish means land, water, and people.
Yeah.
Let's go check. There's a fish called Moorish fish. What the hell is a Moorish fish doing underwater? Because that's where Moorish fish reside with all the other fish. But if that fish are Moor, then something going on. There's something going on. For fishes are Moor.
Right.
Islam to all the Moors. Give thanks, Moor. Will the Moors got a Will the Moors got a little something on a little Saturday, you know, a little something to do. Nothing crazy. Nothing too crazy, you know. Because it is Saturday. And I know Moors want to get some stuff in before certain people get home and stuff.
Right.
Peace and love to all the chat Moors. Islam to all the Moors. Don't worry, I got you. I know you want your little stuff. Honors to the Prophet and Allah. Honors to all Moors worldwide. Give thanks for all the time. Don't forget Canaanland Moors. Tomorrow we're going to be at 880 Ellesmere for the 5 Principles brunch, 11 to 2. We're going to be running class from 12 to whenever we're done. See what we can get in tomorrow. There's supposed to be some people in attendance searching for more. So we'll be there doing class so they can get a little something if they really need it. The honors to all Moors. Peace and love. Any closeouts, shout outs, or anything else, Brother Yusuf?
Yeah, give honors to Allah. Give praise to Allah. Give honors to the Prophet. Give thanks to the Green Sheet for the platform. Islam to all the Moors in the chat. And you know it. Next week, the 20 Saturday. This week Saturday. Next Saturday. Yeah, next Saturday. Next Saturday, man. It's getting close. Next Saturday, Green Sheet will be here. 16-acre library, Springfield, Massachusetts. 12 to 2:30. Ask a Green Sheet. It's gonna be a good one. It's gonna be real good. It's gonna be real good.
Islam. And you already know, they had thing there? They had internet up in there?
Say that again?
They have internet there?
Yeah.
All right, yeah. So we'll be able to stream. We'll probably be streaming too for the Moors who aren't able to be there. You know we always look out, so make sure you just send your little donation to Brother Yusuf for, helping to do this missionary work. You know what I mean? This is not some Cujo stuff. This is a more in their territory. Saying, hey, there's info that you need. Here, you can get it from somebody, worth getting it from. You know what I mean? So give thanks more for looking out.
Well, give thanks, man.
Islam to all the Moors worldwide. Peace and love. Islam.
Standing on the rock. Morocco. Here we go. Over by Mo. Grand Sheik Cujo. Let's flow.
Up from the grave, no longer in the dead state. Colonization claimed my consciousness, but now I'm awake. Broke the chains of being ignorant, I stand on the truth. Competent in my proper person, rocking the booth. Navigating through the waters in the leanable rights. The 7 seas, Allah sent me, so I'm bringing the light. Can't rewind the hands of time, so I'm expanding my space. I'm from one human family, the human race. My pedigree is in my blood, I'm forever a Moor. Asiatic mobile body, sound I'm ready for war. She redeems when I speak to she, I'm speaking to me. Assistant and helping uplifting fallen humanity. For the record, on the record, neither Negro or black. A troglodyte, my people suffering, we only attack. My people perish from true knowledge, we so desperately lack. So why in the hell would I want to go back? No. Can't go back to that. Been a slave of my mentality. The chains that were pounding me. Listen to me now. Can't go back to that. From on the left, you're on the right, and the left. Melanated radiation is bright.
Yeah, we don't regress but progress. Crystals back for no stress. With the fence and not liberate the mind's oppressed. Staring at a wall in a hole, show you a ladder, which is not a thing you climb, but your 7 chakras. Ask Jacob, 5 up, assalamu alaikum. Left foot first, so standing on the square, take 'em. The opposite of get out black holes into light so marvelous. You get scared from fright, false and light. To net appears real, you just might sit the trap, can't move, just paralyzed. Paralysis that you only get if you see. Your heights are so deep, the depths are so deep. Intelligent hoodlums said arrest the presidency. 2 shots for drink champs, Nori knows True Ali. Calling Yasin Bey most step, you think like the colonists. Even though Nostradamus told you what your problem is.
Can't go back to that, being a slave of my mentality. Of the chains that were bound to me. Listen to me now. Can't go back to that. I'm on the left, you're on the right, and the left. Melanated radiation is bright. Can't go back to that, being a slave of my mentality. Of the chains that were bound to me. Listen to me now. Can't go back to that. I'm on the left, you're on the right, and the left. Melanated radiation is bright. I rise to give honors to Allah, the Father of the universe, to Noble Drew Ali, to Grand Sheik, Cujo Awo El, Canaanland Moors, for sharing this mic with me, Temple number 5, to my son, my firstborn, for producing this track, Hassani Mosa, 206, also known as Preach to God, and to DJ Funk Daddy, the best in the West, Washington Republic, and to my emperor, Islamism.
Yeah. Alright, Chef, what up? CMP, what up? Masons think they add up with they tack down tassels. Watch me send you rope to Albion in a lasso. Caucasoid hybrid, sun burns your eyelids. To the human fam, we created a virus. Some help to build, but most destroy. A future through melanin girls and melanin boys. Fast food, television, miseducation. Mr. History stole the rights from our nation. National appellation, not in all capitals. Tribes of nobles and noblesse with woven crest. Fezzes and sashes, shawls and vests. All Ashkenazi Jews, I put an alpha hex, omega the rest. Without a bloody mess, left dead in some Nikes like David Koresh. Burn out your temple with myrrh and frankincense. To work a ritual, it's all about intent and invent. Melanin, the magic dust, trust me. I say to all Apun while all Orishas love me, trust me. Black candles, we got red ones too. When lit with everything, this is deja vu. With no Denzel, cause Washington won the Grammy. He doesn't even know Washington is his granny. Could've sniped Wesley, but went for tax evasion. Moors and courts facing these judge masons. Give back your rituals and your Babylon ways. Give back your holy books, call me rebellious slave. Give back your story, there's more truth in mine. Give back your crucifix, hanging tree boots and swine. Give back your rituals and your Babylon ways. Give back your holy books, call me rebellious slave. Give back your story, there's more truth in mine. Give back your crucifix, hanging tree boots and swine. Coming to you from the blackness in peyote teepees. Not the head rush from ice or sucking freezies. You could choose to research, don't believe me. Key of life songs cause inner visions and wonders like Stevie. Walk through the world under, your mind flows like tundra soil. Hit you like Shango when my blood's on boil. Come as Bata'Allah or Batala. With one eye for sight, I can see from afar. Mermaids and mermen cry for tadpoles and jaws. Trying to get the serious, they call it mission to Mars. To get you not looking, distract attention. Not to mention, but they have your brains in a lasso and your pineal gland tattooed with designs calcified. My height is amplified. The level so deep, my flow is amphibious style, leaving clansmen bloody in a hideous pile. Not like King Leonidas and Spartan saying 300 took out a legion of Ra. You must be fronting like European pharaohs before the 18th dynasty. Coming and killing me and saying they're nasty. One golden firewall so you can't catch me. Had to jack your beat cause the shit's catchy. Sometimes a fake cruise my face screw like little Scrappy. And at the piggies with the scanners trying to speed trap me. Cause I'm repping blue bloods wanna cap me. I told you, boys in blue thinking I'm a Crip soldier. Give back your rituals and your Babylon ways. Give back your holy books, call me rebellious slave. Give back your soul, there's no truth in mine. Give back your crucifix, hanging tree boots and swine. Give back your rituals and your Babylon ways. Give back your holy books, call me rebellious slave. Give back your soul, there's no truth in mine. Give back your crucifix, hanging tree boots and swine. On the real. Fake wars know the deal. Yo, Redkin, what up? That's how we do it. Give back your rituals and your Babylon ways. Call me rebellious slave.